Now that we have tried the more straightforward questions, let us try a more challenging example. Fill in the coefficients for each substance in the equation below to make it balance. Let us try to solve this question using the steps we learned in the previous video. Again, in the very first step, we need to identify the reactants and products and write their chemical formula. Since iron 3 oxide and carbon monoxide are the reacting substances, they are the reactants and should be written on the left-hand side. On the other hand, as iron and carbon dioxide are the products, they will be written on the right-hand side. Now, step 2. Write down the number of atoms for each element for the left-hand side and right-hand side of the equation. Iron 3 oxide has 2 iron atoms and 3 oxygen atoms, while carbon monoxide has 1 carbon and 1 oxygen atom. On the right-hand side, there is 1 iron atom and also 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms from carbon dioxide. Now for step 3. We need to add in coefficients in order to balance the equation. This is the equation that we obtain at the end of step 2. From here, we can actually see that there is both 1 carbon atom on both sides of the equation. So, we shall move on to the next element, iron. There are 2 iron atoms on the left-hand side, but only 1 iron atom on the right-hand side. Therefore, we should add a 2 in front of iron, and this is the equation that we will get at this point. Now, after adding the coefficient of iron, there is no longer only 1 iron atom on the right-hand side, and there is equal number of iron atoms on both sides of the equation. So, iron is now balanced, and we move on to oxygen. We note that there are a total of 4 oxygen atoms on the left-hand side, but only 2 oxygen atoms on the right-hand side. So, like before, we should add a 2 in front of carbon dioxide to balance it. This will be the equation that we will obtain, where there are 4 oxygen atoms on the right-hand side, just like the left-hand side. However, we note that because of this coefficient that we put in front of carbon dioxide, there is now 2 carbon atoms on the left-hand side, and we need to ensure the number of carbon atoms on both sides of the equation is actually also the same. So to do that, we will have to add a 2 in front of carbon monoxide. However, the troublesome thing about this is that we realize if we do that, it will also change the number of oxygen atoms on the left-hand side, which will then not be balanced anymore. Therefore, now, what we need to do is actually to change the coefficients of both carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide such that both carbon and oxygen atoms on both sides of the equation can be balanced at the same time. We notice that carbon monoxide is the only carbon-containing compound on the left-hand side, and that carbon dioxide is also the only carbon-containing compound on the right-hand side. Therefore, we know now that to balance the number of carbon atoms on left-hand side and right-hand side, the coefficient of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide must be the same. Since adding 2 as a coefficient did not work out, let's try with 3. This will be how the equation looks like after adding in 3 as a coefficient. There is still 2 iron atoms and 3 oxygen atoms from iron 3 oxide, but there is no longer only 1 oxygen and 1 carbon atoms, but 3 carbon and 3 oxygen atoms on the left hand side instead. On the right hand side, there are still 2 iron atoms as well as 3 carbon and 6 oxygen atoms. Looking at the whole equation now, we can see that there are both 2 iron, 3 carbon and 6 oxygen atoms on the left hand side and right hand side of the equation. Therefore, we can now say that the equation is balanced and this would be the final answer. So, after going through so many examples, you should already know how to solve and balance chemical equations by using the different steps in a systematic manner. Here is a summary of what we have learned today, which are the 3 steps to constructing chemical equations. Use the steps to guide you through the questions in your worksheet. Hope that you have enjoyed my lesson and thank you for your attention.